Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here, with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8 and Third Reich events. Our empire is getting bigger, getting more complicated to manage. I was just messing around a little bit here with setting up some of the various theater command setups and getting too big even for that. We're getting ready to, we're going to be moving, shifting east, a Heer's group for the invasion of Brazil here under von Rundstedt. So, organizing things up, getting things ready. As you will remember, we've had to retreat from our, well, don't know if had to, but we retreated from our invasion of Greenland, primarily because we had an encounter with the U.S. Navy, and we weren't pushing any deeper into the country, so that was the December bonus, reorganization bonus. Wasn't being helpful, at least in the sense of, and blizzards, okay, general winter. And taking Greenland, oh, okay, a bunch of events. So we have come back to think about this some more. Let me stop this here. Think about this some more. Okay, sorry. Escort ship damage control systems. Wrong tab, there we are. Okay, got that. So let's move to anti-aircraft. Keep the evil, mean, nasty allied air power away from our ships. Okay, bomber or torpedo? Torpedo bomber focus, okay. Okay. We're going to stop all of that, at least for some considerable time in the future. We've gotten good enough. We're looking at just, I think, what, 5 squadrons. I would rather, since we just looked over here, improve fire control just so our escort vessels shoot a little better. Okay, the United Kingdom has lost the Prince of Wales. Operation Britannia Rising underway. Okay, well, that's a cool name. I'm guessing it has something to do with Britain. Well, forces of the United States undertake an operation to liberate England. Okay, German operation. Okay, that, like I say, is a very cool name, but it is not a name the U.S. would ever have used. The reason, let's see, Germany used Operation Sea Lion. Let's just say a British spy or radio intercept heard something about Operation Sea Lion. What might they think it has to do with? Well, let's see. Sea lions swim in the sea and they come up on the shore. Maybe that's an invasion code where, I don't know, Operation Overlord. I don't know if that to anybody gives any clue as to what it would be. What's it related to? Like, obviously we know that was the invasion of Normandy now. But meaning if somebody just in the German hierarchy or whatever heard Operation Overlord without any other details or some division assigned to Operation Overlord, I don't know if it would tell them a thing, a theater. But Britannia Rising, I mean, like I say, it's a cool name for this, but it's not what the U.S. would have used. Okay, well, we've lost province in Wrexham. Uh-oh. Okay, we didn't I have a garrison on that? Nope, I guess we didn't. Oh, we were moving stuff around. Okay, well, we're going there. We've just got invaded, so, well, players, this is a good warning to you. Don't leave Britain undefended. Fortunately, I had, you know, when I decided to make Britain my staging area for organizing up the forces, I hadn't thought that they would be invading, so fortunately I have a good defensive force. If I just had these little garrison brigades, that could have been a real problem. Okay. Okay. Airbase has been sabotaged. This looks like a random Munster, Frankfurt. So we lost some airbase somewhere. Okay. Let's see, who wants to buy Romania? Yes, we'll sell Romania some. Let's rebuild the 12th Unterseeboot Flotilla. Nice German compound word there. From the production queue. New industry. Kind of thought we already had that, but I don't know that I want to spend all that money or supplies on it. So we're going to do a note to cool down here. Create Panzer Corps. Yes, we like those. Those, I think, show up in Berlin. Oh, okay, they're these guys. Some of them are SS Panzer Corps. Okay. Decent. Things. Yes, we want a veteran units, Wehrmacht divisions. Okay, so see, he's a good mountain division. He'll fight well in there. Who we want it under? Sure. Probably many of you know, and I don't think I mentioned this. I don't know if I did. For Hitler Eugen, obviously it's, you know, SS 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitler Eugen. As the war got stressed more and more, they were putting soldiers younger and younger into the fighting, where traditionally, as we've seen in this, boy, I think it was around the age of 16 or 17, a lot of the men, boys, went from being in their Hitler Youth to be in the Reich Arbeitsdienst, the RAD, which is basically the National Labor Service. It was 6 to 18 months, I'm not sure. It probably changed at different times. You know, the labor service. I presume you got paid, but I don't think it was much because they were providing a lot of, you know, housing and food and whatever. And they did a lot of projects. As just reading about another thing, doing some land reclamation. Well, somewhere up in, I don't know that it was East Prussia, but Prussia up here or something, from some large swamp before the war. And then as the war was continuing, they were still doing a lot of, you know, national labor service. And as we've seen, military drill and other things as well, you know, continuing your military education. And doing a lot of service behind the front lines, generally speaking, but improving the logistics capability of the army. And I think it'll be ready for the next version of TRE, an event covering their service up in Lapland area, before and during the invasion of the Soviet Union, that they sent some even way up there into the north. I don't have, I was in this thread that I was looking at. These are literally some of the top scholars on National Socialist Germany. And I say this because I'm reading what they're saying, and a few of them are accessing the Bundesschar archives, or however you pronounce that, in Germany. They're looking at the original source material. Now, a lot of them are uniform collectors or involved with uniform collectors, but they're also doing as much original source material research as they can, which are looking at like catalogs for uniforms, and whether it's an SS uniform or a RAD uniform, when was a badge was first put up for sale, and when was it taken down, these real facts, as well as looking at datable photographs that are how they were actually done and where the uniforms. And they're doing all this research, and they were just talking about that there is no known list of all the RAD units and their designations and where they served. And Germans are famous for their lists, and I do know that, yes, that as the war was winding down, a lot of records were destroyed. And I'm not saying that there isn't information to identify all the units, but there is no coherent database that they have access to. One guy had a list of like 12 pages long that he had been keeping, and it's far from complete, and he stopped it a few years ago. That they're looking at doing it, and they mentioned a book that has to, or is known to exist, and I presume limited publication book of a women's and a men's RAD whatever designation book at period. But these people have literally been unable to find the book in existence, whether to own it or in an archive somewhere. I forget, probably couldn't pronounce the title exactly. And so that they're looking to find, because they have photo, and they have the one guy was posting, who was just inquiring, had a photo of his mother's first husband who died in the war in Italy, but in his RAD uniform, and clearly showed the RAD, sort of the shovel shape on the arm shield with the number of the unit on it. Where was it? And then one of the other people did have the information and posted the information. Then another person says, well, and that it was formed in 1935. And it had a certain honor title. Another person came in and, well, in 1941, this honor title belonged to a different unit, and it doesn't mention this unit. So things changed. What was true in 1935 may not be true in 1941. Growing, shrinking, redistributing. However, I know this is getting around back to the Hitler Eugen. Trust me, I'll get there. So we don't know, as a collective information, what was going on in National Socialist Germany coherently, still to this day. So at some point, because they eventually moved the age down to 16 years old to go into the army, I don't know if that's drafted or if that's just volunteers, and now that's probably much better known. I mean, I just don't know it right off the top of my head here. And so were they still, if you were drafted, or you were drafted into the RAD, or you could volunteer for the army, is that how it was going at 16, or was it a draft down to 16? I'm not sure. And if so, when? So eventually, obviously, the manpower for the RAD units, which served a, generally non-combat role, but were very important in a logistic support role for an army, had to start losing a lot of its manpower. And that probably goes to why the organization tote, not just in the building of the Atlantic walls and other formations, the other, submarine pens and other large constructions like this. We haven't seen because we haven't lost in Italy. That's what it takes, is to form the Italian organization tote units. The TRE has some very good events. See, some things if you win you don't get to see. I've thought about or manually firing it, but I haven't fired the event that sets that up. And they were, being used to do the more impromptu or quick construction defensive lines in Italy, to do the manpower for that. And obviously the army was working as well to make those. And as they turned Königsberg into a bit of a fortress and other things as they were falling back. So that manpower may have been shifted using from the rad to the tote, and may explain a little more why that there was a coherent expansion of tote, of organization tote, as opposed to just letting the rad do it, but again convoluted around to it. So that we do know that Hitler-Jugend division was made up of primarily boys, 16, 17, maybe into the 18 years old, with, of course, veteran NCOs and officers. They used the Hitler-Jugend single Sigrun with the key superimposed over it, and that key goes back to Sepp Dietrich, or Sepp, as I understand, is the German word, or a German word for key, from the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, or whatever, however I'm putting the word, whatever, division. A lot of the officers and NCOs came from that division to form Hitler-Jugend, is the officer and NCO cadre for the division. So that's sort of the pedigree of the division. Using this moment to talk about it. Another thing is I learned in looking through photos for the Vorwärts Panzer mod of submod for RPM that I did the images for it. The tank drivers in the Panzer Regiment, many of them, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I don't know if I did, wore leather outfits, pants and jackets, not the sort of leather trench coats that are sort of somewhat comical and somewhat real, somewhat comical for the Gestapo type things you see in Hogan's Heroes, but shorter leather jackets and leather pants. Figure it must get hot in that, because tanks get hot inside, and they're, even in Europe it does get warmish at times, but the photos that I've seen aren't particularly like winter clothing, but they're black leather pants and jacket sets, and they're both. And basically what that is those were made primarily for the submariners, because getting up, I think mostly officers, but maybe all submariners, getting up on the decks of the submarines in the Atlantic, the leather was designed to keep you warm and the water off of you. So they made a bunch of those, but because by the time, I think it was getting, late 43, early 44, a lot of the photos that I've seen are in the Low Countries here, and dealing with the bridge too far, Market Garden, I guess, and other related events that some of the photos I know come from. That by that time the Submariner Corps was basically decimated, and they didn't need all those leather units, and I don't know why particularly, but it's particular to Hitler-Jugend, whether somebody had a connection or they just raided a depot or whatever, but it was basically limited to the tank drivers, that they're wearing black leather pants and jackets that were originally made for the Navy that ended up being for Hitler. Sorry if that took too long, but I find things like that interesting stories. It very much fits with, let's see if we can find it. The SS image of, you know, black leathers and whatnot, but okay, I was going to attach them to what's 46, so let's just attach them to the 46. Start sending them that way. Divisional commander. Prefer not to use my skill 4. Troger. I want to attach them to a higher authority, partially to benefits all of, you know, to the units themselves, but partially to get the combat experience as you move up. You're still missing your support unit. It was being upgraded to motorized support. Okay, Hauser's gonna... We've got a bunch of SS units here. We'll leave them be. Now we will see, which I don't know how well it will happen, whether the Americans will be able to take advantage of it, because see, they do have a port. I'm pretty sure that the AI will make a shall we say rapid supply connection. I don't know if they will make a rapid reinforcement to this force. Now, don't know how these things came to be here and taking this. Meaning, I still not sure, and I was very curious, and I don't know if I'll have the time to just sort of go back to an older save to try to have D-Day happen. I'm really still concerned how well the forts and coastal fort situation works, as I know in the older version that I've played of Black Ice back to the older series 7.5 or whatever, or 7.4 or whatever before, and before, the invading force would automatically gain control of the coast. So the more defenses you had, it was the harder. They didn't do you any. They did you more damage than good. Now, of course, if there isn't a scripted invasion, and if there's you know, if I didn't have all, because obviously I'm going to win here. This isn't a question. The question may be how hard the fight's going to be, but it isn't a question of whether I'm going to win or not. But if I had just police units, garrison units, and whatnot around Britain, and if the army was still stuck off in the Soviet Union or stuck down in Latin America, they might be able to exploit out and take Britain well enough that they might take it back before I could retake it if the U.S. is in good shape with good mechanized divisions to reinforce. Some famous divisions there. Screaming Eagles, Big Red One. So that they very well might have been able to take that and force that back and then do a non-scripted invasion. And these forts would definitely help with the non-scripted, meaning that they just decide, oh, hey, let's go invade. But a scripted one, it hadn't. So I really wonder how that would have worked out. If I'm starting to talk too, and I'm definitely trying not to do that, but if I start talking too long on a, not just a particular episode, but just overly much on like going on about the Hitler Youth and the RAD and whatever, let me know, because it's a balance question. From the feedback that I get from the viewers, you like my historical commentaries and interests like that. But if it's slowing down too much or getting too much into the weeds, I need to know that. And may not be for everybody, Desert Command and Control Unit, but some people might find that too much. My purpose is not to... We're going to not be fighting too much more in the jungle, so we'll move over to there. Orange and transport planes. Oh good, we'll get longer range transports. Out of that. Well, we'll come back and we can increase the bomber ranges here, so let's do some research there. And command and control. Command and control. Yeah, 38. We'll let those go. Okay, we lost a province in Yugoslavia. Uprising. Okay. Well. Yeah. Oh, who? Hungary. Okay. More aircraft. I just want to see who we have here. Ah! Come on, you're taking too long to get... Here we go. Send them in. Okay, now... Horse vessel. Hope. Talking a lot about Hitler Eugen. Now horse vessels. This is sort of what I'm saying. But the event's up here, so I want to cover it. I'm not sure what... And I really wished I hadn't clicked on that. I want to see. I think that's a Czech machine gun in there, if I remember the photo right. The 18th Freewheeling Panzer Grenadier Division horse vessel. Obviously, the horse vessel lid, I think is how it's pronounced, or the horse vessel song, is the Nazi national anthem, and I sort of think I know it when I hear it, but can't possibly sing it, and you don't want to hear me sing it either way. He's obviously sort of the big Nazi martyr. The other one, of course, that wasn't lost to Germany at the time, but sort of was lost to history, was Gustloff, who was assassinated in Switzerland. And I want the villains to be remembered. Go back to the, lost in history. A lot of people, oh, we just want that to be history, to forget the Nazis and for them to just ever go away. No, we need to remember. We don't need them drilled to our heads every single day, how evil the Nazis were. We don't need that. But we need to remember who they were and what their evils were. They're not to be forgotten. The Nazi villains aren't to be forgotten. Now, if you're a modern-day Nazi, you probably haven't liked this series, so you've gone away. That's fine. So their martyrs are not martyrs to us, the anti-Nazis, the non-Nazis, however you want to say that. But you need to still remember who they were and what the National Socialists used them for. So Wilhelm Gustloff with the ship and the corporation, the armaments manufacturing named after him and all of that. With this series, I brought that back into consciousness, that I think was very much, because I'd heard of that ship a lot, but the passenger ship, but I didn't really get the connection until starting to work on the mod. And now everybody does know about Horst Wessel, and there, we have this. We got the modern day Eagle, which is a ship in the U.S. The tall ship in the U.S. Coast Guard is the Horst Wessel, renamed. The Americans took it as part of the war booty. So that vessel still sails today. So we need to remember, I don't remember them as a martyr, but I remember them as their function of a Nazi martyr. Obviously, he was I don't know if it was a slander to call him a pimp, whether he really was or not. I mean, pimps aren't good things. I'm not trying to make that. I just don't know whether that I know he's been called that, whether that was just done to demean him or if that was an actual reality or general reality of his life. But he was a Nazi martyr, but particularly also, unlike Wilhelm Gustloff, he was an SA martyr, as of the Sturmabteilung. This was, and I don't know how much of the association. We already looked at Field Herrenhalle Division, which is that it? No, it's the Hermann Goering, but which is moving around in here as the Army's attempt, or the SA's attempt to rebuild its image within the new National Socialist state and its function within the Army. I don't really think that this was part of that. It may be, but from my remembered readings on the creation of the division, it was much more of an SA attempt to recruit right-thinking Nazis into the SS. There's sort of a long, convoluted tug of war, if you will, between the Army and between the SS as to how many men could join the SS. One of, a lot of the people think of the SS as elite units. Some of them were, okay? And they were elite for multiple reasons. One, they were ideological. And if you have diehard ideological people, they fight harder, give up less, those kind of things. Another reason a unit is elite is because it has more training or different training than the average units. I don't really think the SS, Waffen-SS, had more training time. I'm not talking before the war, the Vergen, some troop or whatever. I'm talking, during the war period. I don't think they had particularly more training. They had a little different training styles than the regular Army, but I don't think more training than the Army. Another thing that makes a unit elite is its equipment. If it's given more or better equipment than the standard, and when you're talking about Das Reich, Liebstandart, and others, they definitely were given better equipment. When you're talking about units like Handschar here, they weren't. They were given remnant equipment that they could, scrape up. It wasn't all first-line equipment. It was, what can we get where? So that varies in quality when you're talking about Waffen-SS units. Makes an elite. Another thing that makes an elite is shall we say, a selection process, whether it's like in some of the modern Rangers or Green Berets or Airborne. They go through, you know, they get a bunch of soldiers show up, go through a selection course as part training and part survivor, if you will. You know, there's only so many slots available, and so even if you meet the minimum requirements, they're only going to take 100 people, and if 500 people show up to go through the training and 200 meet the minimum requirements, they're only going to take the top 100. You know, so you might have been good enough to be in the Airborne, but they were only going to take 100 and you weren't in the 100 best. That's another thing that makes an elite. Well, there were strict limits, and it did shift a little bit over time, but there were strict limits put on Waffen-SS recruiting, so that it kept the SS smaller. Himmler was fighting those throughout its existence once the war started, because he wanted to grow his power base. So the SS could take just the best, if you will, by their ideas. I don't think they had, you know, got to run up the hill and back in a certain amount of time, or those type of, I mean, there was a basic physical fitness, but I don't think it was a grueling multi-day, at least I've never read of that, courses. It was more SS ideology of who are the best people kind of thing. So they were doing a lot of that, and so that they were getting the cream of the crop, if you will, partially because these are the few most motivated to want to be Nazis, plus they could only take so many of them, so they took the best of them, the taller, the thought to be better by Nazi standards, so they took those in there. Well, as the war was going on, one of the problems with the SS is that they had high casualty ratings, particularly from early on their, quite honestly, their poor leadership in combat. A lot of stupid mistakes were made, and just things that an army officer wouldn't have made at the time. You know, charging enemy positions or whatever, that both caused higher casualty rates and much higher officers, because they were taught to lead from the front, and not just lieutenants but captains and majors, so they were taking higher casualty rates because of that early on. Now they got better, they learned the lessons. I'm not trying to, what was true in 40 wasn't true in 42, if you understand what I'm saying there. So that they had higher casualty ratings, but even later on, once they weren't making the stupid mistakes, they were, because of their ideological viewpoints, they weren't surrendering, obviously, and they were sticking in battle in the defensive battles in 43 and 44 much longer than regular units, so that their units were taking higher casualties because they were fighting on the front, holding the front line longer until they were forced back to retreat. So that a lot of the new recruits were going in as replacements as opposed to expanding the number of units, was part of the problem. Now, they wanted to get, and the reason this was named Horst Wessel was to get a lot of the SA people, and again, this goes back to earlier in this episode, we were talking about men going into, going through the RAD before going into the army, and I'm still not sure who, because a lot of them, this is late 43 when this is formed, but really I think the unit really started to really come into operation in 44. So in 44, who were the SA that they were trying to recruit? Because most of the SA, these guys that we see here on the map, they're the older guys. They're the guys that aren't going to come into a Waffen-SS unit and So, and all the other ones that drafted and volunteered into the regular armed services, because a lot of the SA did go into the Air Force, ground crews and other things, and the Marine SA, lots of those guys went into the Navy. So it wasn't just the Army, but they had already been dispersed into the Army. So I don't know who, as opposed to, the Hitler Youth that are just coming to availability, or whether these are people with family connections to the SA or other things, but this was an attempt to get the SA to come into the SS. Well, as you probably know, the SA, especially after the Night of the Long Knives, didn't like the SS. This basically was a general recruiting failure, as everything that I've read about this for this division. So it had very few people that were SA members that had particular attachment to the Horst Wessel. So my understanding at the time, obviously when Horst Wessel was killed, the SS was a subgroup of the SA, but I don't really think that the SS had much attachment to Horst Wessel legend and lore, so I don't think it was very, prominently liked by them particularly. Meaning it wasn't so much of a shared camaraderie with the martyr of Horst Wessel. What happened, and as they talked about here, is this division was mainly made up of Volksdeutsch, and particularly Hungarian at the time. So it's not, and this isn't unlike the the Italian division or some of the Ukrainian or Latvian, Lithuanian divisions made up of foreign ethnicities. These were made up of Germans living outside of Germany. And this gets back to, and this is sort of what I was talking about, the manpower limitations. There was an agreement between the Army and the Waffen-SS to, like I say, to limit the size or the numbers of recruits, maybe not more the numbers of recruits into the Waffen-SS from Germany, so that you aren't taking too many away from the Army. But as part of this agreement, all non-German citizens were to be under the Waffen-SS's control. And I'm saying that in that way is because at least initially, a lot of the units like the Freikorps Denmark and some of the Baltic state units weren't specifically SS units, but they were sort of under the Waffen-SS control. As time went on, they were more and more integrated as, and we were talking about this earlier, of the Waffen-SS or Waffen-SS unit divisions, they were more and more integrated into the SS hierarchy. So all the foreigners coming in were to be under the Waffen-SS. Now, of course, that wasn't always reality. Some of the divisions that were moving through Hungary and Romania, army divisions, were picking up recruits, literally picking up recruits during the invasion of Yugoslavia and Greece from the Germans living there. And I don't know if they were fudging their sign-up documents or whatever. And a lot of the Russian volunteer elements, not necessarily units, but manpower going to German units, were coming in formally into army units, and we've seen a lot of the Eastern peoples, the Turkmens and other Cossack types, forming units that were under army control. So there was a lot of that going on, and particularly like the Arab Legion down here, a lot of people that were just unacceptable to Nazi ideology, and particularly the SS, were more under the Wehrmacht, the army, the Heer, than the Waffen-SS. But there was this general understanding. So generally speaking, if you were a Hungarian German and you did not want to join the Hungarian army, I'm sure there were lots of Hungarian Germans in the Hungarian army, But if you, one way or another, were able to get to a German recruiting center somewhere, I don't know if there were any set up. We've looked at some of the various, particularly in Hungary a little bit, much earlier, um, German Volksdeutsch parties in Hungary and like Czechoslovakia that were forming. If you could get to a German recruiting office, you were put into the Waffen SS. You couldn't, again, generally speaking, you couldn't join the Luftwaffe. You couldn't join the army. You had to go into the Waffen SS. So that a lot of these people weren't necessarily ideological, hardcore Nazi diehard types. They were simply, I think, a lot of them were people that wanted to be associated with Germany. But I also think, quite honestly, and I know I have Yugoslav and, well, not so many Yugoslav's gone, of course, but Hungarian, Romanian viewers out there. But their armies weren't the most professional at this time, weren't the best equipped, and quite possibly the Germans may have been feeling a bit as an outsider within the hierarchy, so that they just didn't want, they were going to be drafted, they knew, into the Hungarian or the Romanian armies or the Slovak armies or whoever's armies. And so instead of wait around and being drafted into this other army, I think a lot of them basically draft dodged, not so much to stay out of the war, but to try to go to a better army, if you will. And were basically informed they had to go to the Waffen SS. And a lot of these people weren't singled out in specialty divisions, but at times there were. And this is one of them where there were, like I say, mainly included the Hungarian Volksdeutsch. So that's what this division ended up being. So long way around. Okay, we're going to, continue this. Okay. I don't want to lose this. So let's see if we can find it. I think it's in Britain here. No, it's Keitel. Look for that symbol. That's what I'm looking for. Or maybe it's up here. Well, that's Naring. Again, I haven't wanted to lose these. I think I've talked enough about, though I don't remember clearly, the various conf group mentalities. Oh, we have Santa Claus raiding in for December here. The Easter egg. Artillery. No, it's still the... I know there's one, but I think it's not that one. Still in Russia, but... There it is. Okay, these both already have the A after them. I just sort of stick that there. Change the name, so... Sorry, I'm cheating a little bit there. Okay, yes, we'll take another very cheap, though not terribly good, but decent defensive division. Okay. Where did that show up? I'm looking for a fortress division with, there we are, no leader. That's what I wanted to give it, a leader. Just a level 2 defensive, preferably. Commander. No, he's too cool of a hat he's wearing. I want to give him a... We'll just give a standard division. Okay, well, this has been long enough. Enough talk about various things crammed into one episode. So we will continue with the next episode, fighting the American invasion of Britain. So see you next time. Thanks so much for watching.